You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So, hello, everybody. This is Sarah again for another episode of Stories of Truth, where we try and get down to the bottom of people's stories and just kind of see where they're headed. And I'm super excited because today's episode is with someone that I don't know her story anymore. So, this is someone that I did my undergraduate college work with, and we actually even lived together for
Yeah.
not a super long time, but a while. Um, but just kind of lost touch after that. And when I had posted a plea on Facebook for a podcast at a certain hour, Ashley responded and said,
Here I am. I can do it for you.
I'm here." So I'm really excited to hear more about her story and where it's headed. I'm gonna have her introduce herself briefly, just who she is, where she's at right now, what she's doing with life.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm Ashley Carroll, I guess if you want to know my last name. Um, in life right now, I just finished grad school. I just finished my master's in music therapy, and that's what I did my undergraduate in actually too, is music therapy. But I hadn't been practicing. When I started grad school, it had been three years since I had practiced, 3.5 years since I had practiced professionally as a music therapist because I had children and moved because I also my husband joined the military, and so when we moved I was 7 months pregnant the first time we moved. So I left my music therapy job that I had at the time in 2015 and then moved to a new place that didn't really have music therapy as a they didn't have a lot of that at all in the area, so jobs were non-existent, and I had a newborn. So, um, yeah, nobody was going to hire a 7 month old or a 7 month pregnant woman. So, yeah, so I just kind of been at home since then. Then decided to had another kid during in that period, and then started grad school a year after he was born. So
And what
I
are the ages of your kids now?
So the oldest Olivia is 5.5, and Sam is 3. A little over he's like 3.5 ish.
Okay. Very cool. And so
So
you just finished grad school, and are you looking to work, or are you still hoping to stay home for a while and then enter work later?
no, I'm definitely itching to get back into the workforce.
Okay.
I had actually tried to start a private practice here where I am in Panama City Beach, Florida. And it had gotten some traction back in 2018. But then we were hit by Hurricane Michael, and
Mm,
that just and this area was really hard hit.
okay.
And it just didn't. Some like most of my clients didn't even come back to the area, and it was just really hard to find somewhere to even. I was doing family group sessions for early childhood.
Okay.
Um, and so it was just really difficult for people to um there weren't the people I had already like had in my group were most of them were gone, or they were displaced and couldn't really afford extra things outside of necessities, which I
Yeah, that
completely
makes sense.
understood. um so yeah, that kind of, and then I was also, because I was also affected by that storm, so I was also dealing with that, and I was in grad school at the time, and I had my kids, so I was just like, you know what, this is not the season for this obviously right now,
A
so I
super
kind of
stress-free life, it sounds like.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just decided, to take a step back from that, and I didn't focus on building a business when I knew, plus, with the military lifestyle, we knew we weren't staying here. So I'm like, I'm not going to put a lot of effort into an area where I'm going to be leaving, and then there's no one. There's another music therapist in the area, but she has a full caseload. So
Okay.
I couldn't be like, oh, well, you're just going to go see this person. Like, no, because she has um, her own private thing where her schedule was full up. So
Okay.
I felt like if I were to provide this service, or like they would get used to this, like I would be leaving them with nothing.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I didn't want to build, and it's a lot of work to like to build those contracts, and then to basically say, oh, well, I'm leaving now, so, and I have no one to replace me. Um, so yeah, I just decided to put that on the back burner, and try to do something in Virginia. I don't know what my plan is in Virginia yet.
And that's where you are moving to,
Yeah,
correct?
Virginia
Okay.
Beach. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the next step in January. We bought a house. Um, so we know where we're going, and it's just a matter of packing up here and moving there, and
Okay.
um, yeah. And then amid the pandemic just adds a whole other, just more, it complicates things
Oh, it
more even
does.
more
I
so
know.
with childcare and working, and especially when you work in mental health or healthcare at all.
Right.
um it just trying to navigate, making those decisions, like what's the right thing for me, what's the right thing for my family,
Right.
and those things don't always align initially, so I have to, things have to be compromised. So
Sure.
um yeah, that's kind of where I am in
That's
what's going
perfect.
on.
I feel like that's a really good segue into what you've told me you want to talk a bit about, because so much of where you're at is kind of situational, and just like the what your husband does for a living, and
Mhm.
having small children. And so talk to me a little bit about just about your story. And I mean, it can be as long or as short as you want, but just tell
Sure.
me kind of where you're at right now with your story. What did you think you'd be doing? What are you doing? What has affected that? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So I guess I can start with where I thought I would be, because it's
Okay.
completely different where I am. So I was actually never one who, we had been married. I married relatively young. I was in my mid 20s, so it wasn't like I was super young, or I was 25, I think.
Sure.
Um, and you know, but we didn't have Olivia until 3 years after we were married. So um and in those first couple years, people were always, there's always that pressure from people, and which I absolutely abhor. I'm like,
Yeah,
don't
I get it.
ask people, like it's none of your business. But
Right.
um I was not one. I was like, if it happens, it happens, and if not, nah. Like I was totally okay with whatever would happen.
Okay.
Um but we definitely weren't trying, like for a while, like we're like, no, we're not in a place where that can happen right now. And my husband was actually a teacher um before he joined the Navy. He joined the Navy at 33, 33,
Okay.
31, 33. Yes, 33.
Okay.
So he was definitely a late joiner. And we had already been married at that point. So the Navy, the whole military lifestyle was not something that I was ever planning on being a part of.
Sure.
Was never in talks about being a part of. Was never even part of the discussion.
Okay.
So when he came home one day, he was like, I want to join the military, and I was like, what?
Okay.
No.
Probably
So
came out of the blue. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, he was he was like he was a teacher, and he was very unhappy with the situation that he was in. I mean, I couldn't imagine him being in this situation now with COVID and everything that teachers have to go through.
Sure.
Because it was just horrible then, and now it's like, I'm sure, just a million times more stressful. So
Yeah.
um but anyway, at the time I was working at hospice. I was doing music therapy full time. I had been there for 3 years.
Okay.
And I didn't like necessarily where I was, um company wise. But I did like the work I was doing. So I was looking at, other, not like, there was nonprofits in the area that I was looking into partnering with.
Got it.
Um, and so if that whole military thing wouldn't have happened, I'm assuming we would probably still be in South Florida. I would still be doing hospice, music therapy, doing, advocating for bigger programs, doing things like that.
Right.
And probably still working, and probably not have kids. I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
how I don't know about that aspect of things. But I probably wouldn't have gone to grad school. I might have done like the hospice. There's hospice specialization
Yeah.
training
Hmm.
for music therapy. So I might have done that to just to really hone in on those skills that I like for bereavement and those like just specialized things that are specific to hospice.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, that would probably be where I would be. But
Okay.
obviously, that's not that's not
Life,
where I went.
life took a turn. Yeah.
Yeah, life took a turn. So, when he joined the military, I kind of we talked about having kids. I was like, well, I mean, the real the the fact of the matter is that military spouses, their unemployment rate is sky high. I mean, it
I've
is
heard that.
yeah, it is like the highest in any population because
Wow.
they move
Okay.
around. Um, some of them have like either there's if they're degreed and they have like a specialization, like it's easier for them to get jobs because their specialization is you can transfer that, and they are
Sure.
doing things that help them transfer licensures and certifications and things like that if they're state specific. There
Okay.
are programs that like wherever you're moving to kind of speed through that process to the
Got
in the
it.
new state. Um, but with music therapy, it's so specialized, and there's pockets of really well, um, like big growing areas, and then there's pockets where no one has ever heard of music therapy, and
Yeah.
if you move there, like you're the one that's gonna have to build it,
That
which
makes
is
sense.
fine. But then there's no job security. It's like you're building. You have to go out there and do all the footwork. So,
Right.
um, like where I'm moving to now, Virginia just got licensure, but because of COVID, it's everything has been stopped, so the actual licensure hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so uh, I was just like, well, if we're gonna have a baby, might as well do it now because I'm not probably gonna have a job anyway. So like that was kind of my that was like
Okay.
my mindset. It really was. And then after I had her, I almost let my music therapy. So every 5 years we have to do CMTEs to keep our board certification, and I almost let mine lapse because I'm like, well, I'm never gonna get a job, and
Oh
this is
wow.
my
Okay.
life now. Like with this baby, like this is my everything.
Okay.
So I almost let it lapse, and then I talked to my mom, I talked to my husband Brad, and he's like, he's like, that's what you really want. I'm not gonna like make you do this stuff to like, do the CMTEs. But he's like, but do you really want? You mean you did all that work? Do you really want to let it go? And I'm like, not really, but also, what the heck, you know?
Right.
So, I decided to get all my credits and keep my certification because, just in case.
Right.
And I decided to get more involved and kind of got reconnected with the music therapy community in Virginia in the state. Um, and so because I had taken like a year and it had been like a year and a half since I had worked, and I was
Oh
like, you know
wow.
what?
Okay.
I just need to be. I had just felt so disconnected
Sure.
from everything, the profession and everything, and I just
Sure.
there was definitely moments of like feeling that I've kind of lost because I had defined myself as a music therapist, like that's my identity, that's
Right.
who I am. And I kind of lost that because I'm not a music therapist anymore. I'm a mom. That's my job now.
Okay.
And I think in that process I kind of lost how important music therapy was to me, and
Ah. Okay.
going back into like doing doing all those credits and like learning things about music therapy again and doing like kind of being in it. I was like,
Sure.
oh yeah, this is something that's it gave me you know life and gave me energy, um outside of not that I don't I love my children, but like
Absolutely. Yeah.
it was not like as fulfilling to me. I am not one that like I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom forever. And
Sure.
there are plenty of people that do, and that's wonderful. I'm like,
Absolutely.
I need a break from my children for other people to be around them, and I can go do things that give me, you know personal fulfillment and professional fulfillment. I mean, I
Yeah.
did, I put all that work in and did all this training and did all this, like, I want to use it. I don't want to just have it sit here.
I feel like that's an important thing to know about yourself too, because you're right. Some people are completely fulfilled being a stay-at-home parent, whether it's a mom
Absolutely.
or dad, absolutely. And that's a beautiful and great thing. But there's some people that your relationship will forever be better with your kids if you're able to do something else,
100,
you know. Um,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's just good to know. That's awesome that you're able to identify this young in your kids' lives. Like, yeah, I need something else
I'm
too.
like,
Because
trust me, mommy will like you. Like we'll have a better time together
right, that's what I'm
when
saying.
I'm
Yeah,
able to like go and do things outside of this.
right,
Be able to
absolutely,
really appreciate the time that we have because it's not 24/7,
sure.
oh, they can't see me, but like, where they're on top of you.
Right.
Especially when they're so young. And I might feel different when they're older, but like right now it's just I remember especially when my son was infant and my daughter was, 2.5, feeling like this. And moms, any moms that are listening, like probably will know this feeling of being touched out. Like I
Mm,
cannot, if one more person touches me, I'm going to lose my mind.
right.
Because you just feel, because you haven't had any personal space where no one's touching you
Mhm.
ever. So,
That makes
and I
sense.
never understood that until I was living it. And it was just, so when I found out I was pregnant with, so for both of my pregnancies, Brad was actually gone for the first 7 months, 8 months of
One
both.
isn't deployed?
So he was doing training. So
Okay,
he was stateside, but he was not in the same state as me.
I
So
got
he
it,
was
okay.
not, yeah. So he wasn't overseas or anything. But
But
so
not
that
at
was
home with you.
hmm?
Not at home with you,
Not,
though.
yeah, not at home with me, no. And so that was a really interesting thing because when the first part of my pregnancy with Olivia, I was around the people in South Florida. I was working, I was pretty much living my normal life, just Brad
Okay,
was gone and I had a baby bump. Like that was pretty much that experience.
okay.
And then I moved to Virginia, and then he was there in Virginia with me. And then for for Sam, I had Olivia also with me, which I found out I was pregnant. He had left for training, and I found out like 2 weeks later that I
Oh
was
my
pregnant.
gosh.
And I remember calling him, and I was like, um, well, actually, I remember saying at night, I just felt really weird, and I was like, you know what, I need to take a test. But then
Okay,
I'm one of those people that I'm like, if I have an inkling like that, I need to know now. Like
yep,
I can't wait till tomorrow morning. I need to take it now. But I'm
I'm
like,
with you on that, yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, but it's 9:30 at night, and I have a 1.5-year-old upstairs sleeping. So I actually reached out to my military spouse community. Like, does anybody? And of course, and like there's kind of that stereotype that military spouses have a lot of babies. So I was like, I wonder if anybody has a pregnancy test like on hand.
Sure,
Like,
sure, sure.
hey, and luckily someone did, and they came over and dropped it off at my house, and I found out I was pregnant, and I called Brad, and I was like, hey, so guess what? And he was really excited, and I was like not as excited because I was like, I'm gonna be by myself. Um,
With another little one
but
already.
another one, and
Yeah,
and not that I had hard pregnancies either way, thank goodness. Um, but I was just like, oh my gosh, like just dealing with a very needy toddler
yep.
and also having issues with pregnancy, and just normal things was just like the fatigue and all of that. I'm like, I just want to sleep. My toddler's like, no, you need to get up and like be a functioning person.
Right.
So like it was really hard to not have the support um of someone. I didn't know a lot of people that well, like
Okay.
that would be able to like come and take care of my kid or to like take her.
Sure.
Um, but she did go to, I had put her in daycare for like a couple hours, like a mom's morning out, basically type of
Sure. Sure.
situation. Um, and so I got a couple hours of break a week, but that
Okay.
was it. And then he got hurt actually, in training. He's fine, and it was fine, but it was just kind of very hectic when it happened, and so that delayed his training. And he was supposed to be home in April. He was supposed to come back to Virginia. That was the original plan. I was supposed to have Sam in Virginia. I had like I'm very crunchy, so I had like this whole like plan. Like I had a doula and like water birth, all that stuff. That was my plan.
Okay.
And all of that went out the window because of he got hurt, and then we had to because of the way the military works, I had to come down to Florida to be with him.
Okay.
Because of where they had PCS, which means they permanently changed his duty station to here instead of
Okay.
a training command. So because they did that, I had to move or live where I was on our own dime. And I'm like, well, we have one income and it's not very much because he's enlisted and it's lower enlisted. We don't have like
Right.
money coming from anywhere. So I was like, well, we have to move. So that happened. He told me we had to move in May. And we moved by the first week of June. So like
Wow.
within a month, I realized I had to move, and then I moved, and then I had Sam in July,
Oh
so
my
I had to
gosh.
like
Okay.
get all the doctors and everything down here situated. I was able to still have a midwife. I was able to still have a doula, um, but it was in like a regular hospital,
Okay.
which it was fine, and I had no complications, which I'm thankful
Sure.
for.
Just not what you
So
originally had
yeah,
hoped.
I was like, I was like, kind of had a little bit of a like fit about it, like, you know,
So,
taking it down on him. But I was like, I'm
oh,
supposed to be in a big, big, giant birthing tub, not
yeah.
in um.
So,
Anyway,
really quick, you've mentioned a few times like stereotypes for military spouses and things
mhm.
like that. I feel like the people listening to this need to hear some of what that
What
entails.
does
So can you talk about that just a little bit? And obviously, like of course
sure?
the military is respected and everything, but what does
Right.
being a
Yeah.
spouse look like?
So being a so like for me, I think I'm in a very also in a very interesting situation because my husband did join later, so we're older
Okay.
than a lot of the people that are his same rank. Now as he's gotten a little higher rank since he's been in now 6 years. So it's starting to kind of even out, and we have people that are kind of the same age as us.
Okay.
When we first joined, my first experience, people that were in that same age as me were all officer wives.
Ah,
Um and I also I usually connected more with them because I have a degree, I have higher education,
sure.
um, and so did they, most of them. They were in their 30s or upper 20s,
Hmm.
so was I, but um, there is this like fraternization weirdness like between enlisted and officer,
Okay.
um, and not so much. It, it's obviously not written anywhere for spouses. I'm like, spouses can do what they want,
Sure.
but when your spouse, our significant other cannot be part of that social group because of the hierarchy. It makes it weird,
Sure.
right? It's like,
Yep.
well, I'm friends with this person, but you can't be friends part of the friend group because he's a captain and you're
Yeah.
not you're an enlisted individual. So it was just very weird. And then the people that are on our same ranking system are in their early 20s. Sometimes they do have more, they even might have kids that are the same age as my kids, but they don't have the same life experience.
Right.
Because they're like 22, 23 years old,
There's
and
a
it's
big
like,
difference between early
yeah,
20s and late 20s.
yeah. And I was like, oh man, I don't know what to do here. Like I don't know how to again, like our kids
Okay.
can play, that's fine. But like it was really hard to connect with people that were on the same level as just like same life
Sure.
season, like even
Yep.
though we have kids that are the same age, I had a professional career.
Absolutely.
um so it was just weird for me. So I came in with these stereotypes too, like thinking of this is how it's going to be. Like, I kind of had this almost like, oh, it's just going to be such a huge big community and there's going to be so much support, because that's like what you hear when they're trying to get you in, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
sure.
like they kind of make it this
Yep.
fantasized um idea, this fairy tale of like there's gonna be so much support and you're gonna like make
Big
friends and be
family.
so
Yeah.
close. And I'm like, I didn't really experience that.
Okay.
And I lived in base housing. And it was like, if anything, there was drama. Like, don't get me wrong, like there's drama, but I don't like there was not um connection. And I think
Mhm.
too, a big part for me is um even though like overall the military stays out of political things overall. I mean, if we're going being honest, a lot of the people in the military, not all, because I have found people and I exist, so that are they're usually more conservative.
Mhm.
And I'm very liberal, like in all ways, like socially, like fiscally, all of that. I'm very liberal, so it was very hard to find people that also thought the same way as I did and had
Okay.
similar social constructs, like viewed things similar to me.
Okay.
Um, and it was hard to like have those conversations with people who were very dead set and things that I felt were, um, well, I mean, wrong. Like, I mean, and
Sure.
for
Yeah.
a lack of a better, and it was a like I don't want to I don't want to shut off those, like, oh, well, we can't be friends because you think that way, but also it came to a point where like, well, I just like, it's such a fundamental difference, right?
Yep.
How do you deal with that and become like your friendship can only go so far because there's such a fundamental difference, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like I'm like going to be cordial, I'm not going to be mean or
Yeah.
to you, or like our kids can play, but at the same time I'm like, well, I'm also more careful of like, what are you saying to the kids? Are you ever like, is there ever a thing where like something comes up and you're not letting other people play because of a certain reason? So
Yeah.
I just I was always very cognizant of that. And so I guess as far as like stereotypes, and I think part of the whole like non-working um the non-working military spouse is part of that stereotype where, if anybody ever works in military or in military with military families, they may hear the term dependa, which is basically a derogatory term for a spouse who lives vicariously through their spouse's rank. So
Got it.
they if their husband is a captain or is, some officer, they will take on that rank like they earned it, and they,
Okay.
like they deserve the same respect
Mm-hmm.
in social situations that that their husband gets in a professional
Okay.
context, right? And just, or they feel like they've earned, um they're very entitled, like they're the entitled
I got it.
to all of these things, which, I mean, there are definitely things that we do get. There's plenty of benefits and they're wonderful and it's wonderful, but it's like that level of entitlement basically.
Yeah.
um and it's not just officer, I don't want to say that, like it can be
Sure.
any person, any rank, but usually you see it like the higher the rank it goes, you'll see it, it becomes more noticeable because their rank means something, because that, like when you're like lower rank, it doesn't, your rank means
Yeah. That makes
nothing. Like, right? So until you're like in
sense.
charge of people, your rank doesn't mean
Got
anything.
it.
So when you're like, when you hit chief, which is um okay, let me think, because now I'm like, I don't want to get like too military speak because that's not the point, but
Sure.
that's like, your chief is like your higher enlisted,
Okay.
right? So until you really hit that, you're not
doesn't really.
it doesn't really matter. Like, you know. So and I think people, and I think that's probably like the biggest thing within the military community that other spouses kind of roll their eyes at when they see that kind of entitlement, because they're like,
Got
really,
it.
you know. um but yeah, I just feel like I mean, and I live on base again now, and I live on base, within the gates on base this
Wow.
time. So um a lot of my the people that but the people that I'm closest to I met through a workout group, and most of them aren't military.
So I was just going to
So
ask you, you had said something about longing for, like, you wanted to connect with people and you
mhm.
were struggling. Were you able to find communities, military or non-military, that you connected with? What did those communities look like?
Yeah, so both times, because both times were through fitness groups actually.
Okay.
In Norfolk it was a mom fitness group, Fit for Mom, which is a national
Okay.
brand. They have franchises all over. But there was a lot of military just because it was the area. I mean, Norfolk, Virginia is like, you
My
throw a rock and you
parents
hit.
actually lived
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like it's like basically 90% of the people live there
Yep.
are military connected in some way. So most of them were, but the people that I've stayed connected actually in the area are not.
Okay.
So like, there's a couple of people that I still talk to that when I move back I'll reconnect with, and neither of them are military.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, the here again, it was a different fitness group, but fitness group all the same, mom
Okay.
fitness group. Um, and there's a few like veteran families and or guard, but no, I think the only friends that I had were active because of the storm. They all got
Uh,
reassigned because this Michael hit. So there's an Air Force base about 30 minutes west of east of here,
okay.
um, and it got hit really really bad. I mean, all the houses were basically um, gone. So anybody who lived there, they reassigned,
Okay.
or they lived off, or if they could get housing off base. But if the housing market was so horrible, because again, like everywhere, um,
Right.
it was just really hard for people to find housing. So most of people got redistributed across the country. So of the few people that I knew that were active duty from that group, were all got
Yeah.
relocated. Um, but that's just, I mean, but then too, I mean, yes, it happened because of the storm, but that's also kind of part of the life. People are going to come in and out, because that's just, you get 2, 3, 4 maybe years, and then you go somewhere else.
Is that what does that feel like to constantly know you could be uprooted? What is that? Because that's not a feeling that most of us know
Right.
unless we're in that situation.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's very strange, because like I've gotten to a point where I'm just like, well, it's like there's a positive and negative to it, because you never feel like you can never feel planted.
Okay.
You oh I've never, I'm I'm not great at home decorating anyway, but I'm always like, well, I'm gonna be moving in 3 years anyway. Like, what difference does it make if I make it look nice or not, right? Um, but it's also, it gives me, it's like this freedom of, I get to experience something new. So I think for my personality, I'm like, I have a little bit of wanderlust, so it like kind of fulfills that.
Okay.
Although I keep going, I've just literally gone back to Virginia. Like, I've gone to Florida and Virginia, so it's a little like not
Yeah.
hitting that wanderlust completely, but it kind of gives me, I can like kind of reinvent what I want to do, or like how I want to approach things. Um, but it is hard. I think now as my kids get older too, I'm experiencing it through them, and I think this is the first time where I think it's really going to affect my daughter, because she's
Oh,
5.
yeah.
Um, we just had her, like, our neighbor who she was so close with, she left,
Mm,
and they both sobbed, and I'm like, it was heartbreaking to watch that.
sure.
Um, because I hadn't had anything like that since I left when I lived in Florida originally.
Hmm.
I hadn't had a reaction like that since then. Like when I left Virginia, I was like, whatever. I didn't really have that. I didn't really have like a
Right.
super close group of friends, and like those who had, I just it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving this wonderful supportive environment. I was just like, okay, we're on to something new. Let's go. Like that was
Yeah.
kind of my, and I think I've kind of put myself into that thought all the time. Like it's like this is the life that I decided to be a part of.
Hmm.
And I said yes, like this is okay, and that it is what it is. And I think I live very much by that. Like we may at any time, and like you go where the military sends you, and you have a little bit of say. You can say, oh, I'd like to go here.
Sure. I think it's hard when you bring kids in the mix too, because I know, like, I have a stepson. He's 18. He's in college. But I I would do anything to make him not hurt.
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
just and I didn't even birth him, so I can't even imagine the connections there when you birth the child.
Yeah.
But like, but like I would I remember last year he had a bad breakup, and it was like his first heartbreaking breakup. And I was like, I'm just coming to pick you up. Like, you don't need to cry at school. And so I went and picked him up, and we had ice cream all day and watched depressing movies and cried. But
Yeah.
I think it does make it more difficult when you have kids, because you don't want them to hurt. And so when you see your daughter crying,
Yeah.
I would imagine that would make it a whole lot difficult. And then that brings us into the next part of the podcast, which is, where are you struggling with this story? Like, what still sucks about this?
I think the biggest thing is the fact that it is the fact of my uncertainty professionally.
Okay.
I don't have um trying to make connections in Virginia and have a job that A is fulfilling, B is like worth, and where kids come into play again is it worth, am I going to get paid enough to make going to work worth it?
Yep.
Right? Because childcare is
Not cheap.
stupid. Like it's so expensive. And you know, we picked a house in a good school district, but with COVID, they are back on lockdown. So
Or
they yeah, so in Florida, well, see, this is the good and bad thing about Florida, okay? Florida doesn't care about anybody. Like they just kind of like whatever. So if schools are open, they're actually taking our district is actually taking away their virtual option. Like not the virtual option that they've always had, I guess, for virtual school, but that's like the virtual school they've always had. It's been there for 10 years, right? No, this is like the special COVID. It's connected to their brick and mortar school. So that's what I'll think a lot, like what most schools are doing across the country. They have this virtual option, but it's connected to an actual
Yep.
brick and mortar school. So they're taking that option away come January. You don't even have that option anymore. So you can either go to school brick and mortar, do the county's virtual school, which means you're out of your school that you've been connected with.
Okay.
And then, or you can homeschool.
Okay.
Those are your options.
Wow.
So I've sent Olivia back because we tried homeschool anyway. So I mean, the biggest, if we would have talked back in like September, my biggest struggle would have been the school and like how I'm about to rip my hair out because I can't.
I've heard that from a lot of parents.
I can't, like my daughter, I'm raising myself, okay? So and
Karma's coming into play. No, I'm just kidding.
I just cannot it was just not great for our relationship. Like it was and so I took a calculated risk of, okay, the school that she's at didn't have any cases, hasn't had any cases, knock on wood.
Okay.
And I had known several people that sent their kids there, and I felt safe sending her. So they're actually both now back in school.
Okay.
And I just like for now my struggle, like when grad school's also over, so that was also my biggest degree struggle. Yeah, so like I finished my thesis, and like once that was done, it was kind of like, oh well, this isn't so bad. Yeah. And just really figuring out what's the next step professionally, trying to get get settled up in Virginia, knowing knowing my kids are going to be okay. So either doing if we keep them in public school, if we have them in this public school option, they will be home virtually until the unforeseen future, which means I can't work because
Okay.
I'm going to be there again by myself because this time Brad is on a sea tour, which means he can be deployed at any moment. So
Okay.
and he will be gone the first 3 weeks because it will be training. So he'll be gone when we move up there. I'm moving in our minivan. It'll be me, the two kids, and the two dogs driving to Virginia. So and we'll be
Okay.
there for a month until he can join us.
Okay.
So that will be a fun fun adventure.
Thrilling to me, yeah.
Yeah. So and I think that's like my biggest struggle of how to balance um finding keeping my the responsibility of being at home and taking care of the home because that's my main role. I mean, I can't just be like, "Oh, kids, you got it, right? I'm going to go to work. I'll,
Yeah.
throw some kibble and some like Cheerios out and just you'll be fine."
That's rude.
Right? So getting that all figured out and going and moving in the middle of the year and trying to find childcare anyway is difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just trying to really um yeah, next steps of life really in all areas because it's everything's so much in the air right now.
And so there's two more small parts, and the next part, so you just talked about your struggles. The next part leads right into what's good. So like what part of this whole, like you becoming a military spouse later in life than most people, and um what has been like, have you found a purpose in any of it? Like what's been kind of redemptive to you?
Yeah. It's actually really interesting because I decided to focus my thesis on my experience as a military spouse.
Oh, okay.
And created a music therapy program focused on building ironically connection
Interesting.
and
Okay.
building your relationships and bonding with your family. The main focus is really uh, nuclear family bonding,
Okay.
resiliency, and then building community, building connection within the greater community.
Cool.
So that's what my thesis was focused on. So, and I'm really proud of that project. And I never would have ever thought to do that without this
Sure.
experience,
Yeah.
and knowledge, because I really wrote it through what I see as such a need as a spouse, like in the community, what's something that's was so needed. And then as a music therapy, I'm like, as a music therapist, I'm like, this is what music therapy can provide
That is very cool. Okay.
for this community. So I actually, my one of my readers is a was a she still is, she's very well known in the music therapy community, and she's like, you should get this published, like this is excellent
Cool.
work. And I got a lot of support from that. So and then got in contact with some folks with Creative Forces, which is I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I have,
It's
yeah.
yeah, through the
I'll tell these
National
people.
Endowment, yeah, National Endowment for the Arts is a program that works Creative Forces. It gets art therapy, music therapy, and other art related services to veterans and their families and active duty folks. They've built national intrepid centers for excellence, which are inpatient facilities for military members with TBI, PTSD, other combat related issues and injuries. And they incorporate music therapy and other creative arts therapies into their treatment. It's like it is part of an integral part of their treatment while they're there, both outpatient and inpatient. So I've made some really good connections through that. It's something that I would probably have never ever thought of or even considered. And I think there's a lot of growth being happening with this population, with military populations. But it has been up until this point. has been focused on the military personnel themselves, the service member, and the family member kind of was like a secondary, like whatever benefits was secondary to the family. And I really want to have create more programming that's focused on the family as a whole, including the service member. Because it was either like family over here and service member over here, and never really like bringing it all together. And that's really where, where I found such a need and such a lot of um, passion, like developing this program and figuring that out, how that could work. So yeah, I think
Sounds
that's
like redemption to me. That's
yeah, right. Like this is
that's like really awesome that you did that.
yeah, like if anybody wants to read my thesis.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out a way we can like get people to it. That's really, really cool. Like
Yeah.
I would definitely consider that. Yeah, that's redemption.
Yeah.
The last part is just kind of this should be either the easiest or the hardest. I don't know.
Sure.
3 words that describe yourself now.
3 words that describe myself now.
Yeah.
Whew, okay.
I know. It's like
I would probably say persistent.
good one.
Dedicated.
Oh, that's a good one.
And hopeful.
Oh, that's an excellent word. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel pretty awesome about the story you just told. And so part of what, why I feel awesome about it is part of what this podcast is I have this like 12-page document that I have for everybody who participates in this. Just kind of, we've been doing this thing in this class. And this class it's in seminary, but it's mostly about like learning how to re-author small parts of your story.
Okay.
So you don't hold like nasty emotions about yourself in them. Like you can't rewrite the past, but you can rewrite how you feel about the past.
Right.
So we've been talking about things like we notice and we appreciate and we wonder about people's stories. So it just kind of goes through like all the different stuff I heard in what you said. And you can burn it or you can read it. I don't care.
No,
But
that was actually when you were sending me that. I was like, that sounds really cool. And how there's actually some studies that were done with military spouses about like creating new narratives to their story, and like how they're basically reframing their narrative of like how they're expressing their experience as military spouses. So like
that's awesome.
and
Yeah,
that's
so that's
kind of
pretty
how
much
I
what
like
this
was
is.
doing my study, like how I was doing some things of like reframing how you know look at your life and your experience. And that's where resiliency comes from, is really like looking at what's happening to you or what has happened to you in a way that can be proactive and productive, and not not just wallowing in the negative, but like reframing it into something that can be um you know positive in a way. I mean,
I totally agree. And we're going to end on that statement actually, because that sums up what this entire project is about better than I could have summed it up. So thank you for listening to everybody who just kind of tuned in for this. I hope Ashley's story shed light on a situation you might not know much about. I know it did for me, and I'm hoping it did for some of you other leaders out there too, so you can lead better to people who need you to be there. So thank you, and we'll talk soon.